All right. Welcome to the first episode of the National Weather Service Columbia podcasts. I am your co-host, Matt Gropp.
And I am your other co-host, Pierce Larkin.
And we are here to talk to you about the National Weather Service, weather in general, and any question you, our listening public, may have.
Yep. We are here to serve you with our voices and with our forecasting talents.
That is very true.
Yes. And we appreciate you listening. I do want to note that. I don't know how many of you there are, but we appreciate you listening. And we've got a lot of stuff planned with this podcast.
We want to make new friends with this podcast.
Absolutely.
All right. So where will this podcast be available in the future? Right now, the plan is to have it up on YouTube. We'll share it on our Facebook and Twitter. Mm-hmm. We will be letting you know if we have it on any other podcast recording services down the road. Yep. So how often are we thinking to do this, Pierce?
2 to 3 times a month. Usually if there's a big weather event that happens in the local area, then we'll come on and we'll cover that. Some of the thought processes behind it. Maybe have one of the meteorologists who work the event on here to talk about it. But generally, 2 to 3 times per month, you can expect us to come back here and record a fantastic episode.
That's very true. So let's just jump right in. First, we're going to discuss kind of an overview of the National Weather Service for the entire country, and then we'll kind of jump into more what we do here in Columbia, the area we forecast for, what the office looks like, etc.
Yep.
So for the National Weather Service in general, there's currently 122 forecast offices that go across the whole country. Mm-hmm. This one here is in Columbia, South Carolina, and we forecast kind of for a small portion of eastern Georgia that includes the Augusta, Georgia metro. Mm-hmm. We go up through the Midlands of South Carolina and then up to basically like Lancaster and across Chesterfield County.
Yep.
So it's mainly the
North Carolina border.
Right up to the North Carolina border, yep. So then there's tons of other offices. We border the Charleston office, the Greenville-Spartanburg office, Raleigh, Peachtree City. So, and Wilmington, yeah. Yep. There's a few other components that make up the National Weather Service, like the Storm Protection Center.
National Hurricane Center.
But yeah, we're one of the forecast offices, or the WFOs.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what life at a National Weather Service line office here in Columbia looks like.
Well, it looks like forecasting the weather 24/7, 365 days a year. We are here at your service any time of year, whenever the weather strikes, be it a nice sunny day or a severe thunderstorm outbreak in the springtime, even sometimes some snow in the wintertime.
Last year.
Yep.
Yeah, I slept in the office last year because of that. It was
a crazy time.
That was strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 3 straight weekends with snow in South Carolina.
It was wild.
So.
But yeah, we are here pretty much no matter what the weather is, no matter what the day of the year is. We have at least 2 forecasters on shift for every shift. We've got really 3 kinds of shifts. We've got day shifts, evening shifts, and midnight shifts. And then we have supplemental shifts alongside those, and then shifts where we can do outreach or research or whatever. We've really got a variety of shifts in this shift working field. The management in the office, they work regular shifts, and then the forecasters in the office, we work the shift work. Right. And management does fill in when we have people on leave or people get sick or whatever. Management fills in.
Or if we have a big event going on.
Yep. They'll come in and help us out.
So let's talk about what those manager positions are. In a regular forecast office like we have here, we have an MIC, which is a meteorologist in charge. We have a WCM, which is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist, and then we have a SOO, which is the Science Operations Officer. So tell us a bit about the MIC here in Columbia, Pierce.
The MIC is basically like the head coach or the GM of the operation. So he is looking at big picture stuff in the office, big leadership role, making sure that everything is getting done, making sure our bills get paid so that, the lights stay on and stuff here at the office. But really, he is the one really in charge of everything, making sure that we're all working towards our performance plans, making sure we're all working towards our goals and accomplishing them, and really just leading the office in the general direction that needs to be led. So our MIC locally is Rich Akulski, and he has been here since 2015.
Correct. Yeah, Rich is an interesting guy. He's former military, and he's one of the few people probably still working in the Weather Service who has surveyed and rated an EF5 tornado
Yep.
from back when he was working in the NWS Memphis office.
Yep.
I think it was Smithville tornado.
Yep. Smithville, Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi. So then moving on to the WCM, that in our office is John Quagliarello.
John Q.
John Q. There you go. And he basically handles all the public-facing aspect of the office. So he interacts with people over at the South Carolina Emergency Management Department, county officials, things like school talks, our Skywarn Spotter series, everything like that kind of goes through John, and he organizes anything that we do as an office that is basically public-facing.
Yeah, he's basically the public face of the office.
Correct.
He's on press conferences. And
Right,
stuff like
so next time we have a hurricane making landfall or something like that, John's the one that does the press conferences with the governor. And I guess this is a decent time to mention it that for the Columbia office, we are the state liaison for the whole state. So there's 3 Weather Service offices that cover South Carolina. We act as the liaison for.
Four.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about, about
Wilmington, Charleston, Columbia, and GSP.
I didn't include us, I guess. I don't know.
No,
but we are the
us.
state liaison. We have the most counties in South Carolina right through the middle that include the capital. So that's why John's the one that goes down to and does the press conferences when there's hurricanes that are making landfall in Charleston's area or Wilmington's area.
And of course, he has to collaborate with their WCMs and stuff and make sure we're all on the same page so that we're, briefing our state and our local partners the same way. So,
okay, so then the next management position at all the offices is a science operations officer, which here is Frank Alsheimer.
Yep.
And Frank is effectively the internal facing person for the office. He handles all of our training, anything that's science related, so any new techniques, new weather, new publications that come out. He's the one that kind of translates that and brings it down to the operational level so we can use it in a forecast setting.
Yeah.
Anything else about the SUE?
Yeah, I think the SUE is really our, when it comes to operations and forecasting, he's really our go-to management guy. If we got any questions about, any of the new techniques we need to use or stuff, we always send them to him. So, he coordinates that and trains us on it.
Okay, so then moving on to the bulk of the people that work in a forecast office are obviously the forecasters. We have, at most offices, there's at least 5 lead forecasters, and they're the ones that are basically the quarterback on each shift.
Yep.
And then there's an associated general forecaster, so Pierce and I are general forecasters here at Columbia.
Yep.
We have 8 general forecasters here, and again, those general and lead forecasters are the ones that cover the 24/7 shifts.
Yep.
So what's a day in the life if we wanted to make a cool video series about day in the life of a weather forecast office?
Well, you come in and, you make sure that you're on time for your briefing, and then you grab a cup of coffee, and then you start working on the forecast. And, that is the most basic day. Now, the forecasters, we do all of the stuff. We'll, when it comes to the forecast, we're sending out our, 1 to 3 day forecast, 3 to 7 day forecast, everything that goes into that temperature, probability of precipitation, cloud cover, etc. We're doing that. Issuing warnings and watches, radar shifts and stuff. We got to be trained on that, to take care of that stuff. Really getting down with the nitty-gritty when it comes to the weather.
Yeah, I'd say the warning and watch aspect is probably the most important aspect of the Weather Service because our whole mission objective is like protecting lives and property for the people that we forecast for. And obviously, tornado, severe thunderstorm, they're going to have potentially fatal impacts on people. Winter storm watches and warnings can be extremely disruptive to either economy or just daily life. So those are kind of the money times for the Weather Service where we our forecasts really, really matter, and that's the unique aspect of the Weather Service, that we're the ones that issue the warnings that come to your phone and wake you up in the middle of the night. We promise we're not trying to be jerks. We're just trying to protect people. So
it's justified.
Yeah, so then when it pops up on TV, that's because we're issuing a warning. And that's kind of the most important aspect of
our jobs.
Yeah, our jobs as forecasters.
We do other stuff too. We'll, on quiet weather days, we're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. We're doing research to help improve our forecast techniques or our operations. We're doing a lot of local studies. Sometimes we participate in national studies and stuff like that. So really on our on the quiet days, we're working on a lot of projects and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the quiet days can suddenly become not so quiet.
Yes.
We do support for like the Forestry Service, if there's a wildfire, like the one that we had wasn't in our area, but the one was in Myrtle Beach like 10 years ago, stuff like that you could be a quiet weather day, clear skies, but stuff can go wrong. You can have
hazmat
situations where we would do kind of aerosol dispersion forecasts and give that to the local authorities.
Yep.
So it can quickly go from a quiet to a busy day.
Yep, absolutely.
Even if there's no, quote, weather.
And that's why you have people here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
There you go.
24/7, 365.
There you go. Okay, so the other people at the office, we have kind of specialty positions. Here in Columbia, we have a hydrologist, an observational program lead, and then our ITO. So what does the hydrologist do?
The hydrologist covers really anything related to the hydrologic aspect of our forecast area. River flooding, flash flooding, river basins. He meets with utility companies to go over, emergency plans with dams in the case of severe flooding like in 2015, so that we're prepared and have operations put in place to know what our responsibility is on that end. He's responsible for all of that. It also is very nice that our hydrologist here is also a meteorologist, so he can cover shifts and help out as well.
Correct. So then we have our observational program lead, who covers all of our co-op sites, which are cooperative observers, which is the long-running climate sites across the United States that are done by volunteers who take daily temperature, max and min, and then our precip at each location. He's the one that maintains all of those systems. And then our ITO, he is our internal software guy who handles making sure all of our systems work, that we can get radar data, we can make informed decisions, and making sure we're getting all the data flowing smoothly, which sometimes doesn't happen, as everyone knows, when it comes to technology.
Yep. So. Yeah, it's very helpful to have someone with as much experience as him to get stuff back up and running as quickly as he does.
He's also a meteorologist.
Yep.
So, and then lastly, we have our techs, who are the unsung heroes of the Weather Service.
Absolutely.
You're not gonna see them on TV very often, but they're the ones that keep the whole ship afloat.
Yep.
They maintain our radar, which is obviously kind of the big primary tool that we use.
Yep.
We have our ASOS stations, which are just the observing stations that are at all the different airports.
Yep.
They maintain those, and they keep kind of everything running and humming as they should. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very important job that does not get enough credit often. So if you're listening, ETs, thank you for what you do, whether you're here or elsewhere.
You can't spell meteorologist without ET.
Yep, that's a fact. Yep.
That's the saying we go with. So, okay, so we kind of covered a little bit of the products that we issue from our office. We talked about watches and warnings a little bit. We'll kind of do a deeper dive into that down the road, but just in general, we covered that enough. So let's transition to one of our weekly segments, which is going to be
the word of the day.
There we go. There's our little jingle, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, it's a jingle.
Thank you, Pierce.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, so the word of the day for today on February 1st, 2023 is the word of the day.
The word of the day.
Okay, there's our singing, which is probably bad.
Hey, that's fine. I don't care.
Okay.
You know what? They got to hear it.
All right, so the word of the day, which is actually an acronym, is VROT, which is VROT, which is rotational velocity, and it is a measurement of how fast the air is rotating that we measure from our Doppler radar, where we take an average of the inbound and outbound velocities that we see on the radar, and we get a sense of how fast that area of air is rotating.
Yep.
So what do we use VROT for?
And we use it for a lot of stuff, specifically tornado warning decision making. We are heavily trained on this. Specifically in our radar applications course. Shout out to all of our instructors. But VROT is very helpful in terms of determining what kind of tornado warning to issue, whether we put stronger wording in it, or whether we just keep it as a baseline tornado, or it helps us to just decide whether we're going to even issue a tornado warning at all.
Right. I think that's an important decision between like a tornado and a severe thunderstorm.
Yep.
You wouldn't see a lot of VROT or rotational velocity with just a severe thunderstorm. You might see straight line winds that you can pick up on radar, but you won't see a lot of VROT for a severe thunderstorm versus
a tornado warning.
Yeah, a tornado warning. So.
And it's obviously used in conjunction with other things, such as the characteristics of the environment. But it is it's a very helpful tool. And some of the thresholds we use for lines of thunderstorms that, create sometimes spin-up tornadoes. We often get those around here. We usually use around 25 to 35 knots as a general threshold, and then once we're getting into more typical tornado-producing thunderstorms that are called supercells, we're getting to 30 to 40 knots of rotational velocity is what we're looking for. So it's not the only thing we use, obviously, but it is a very helpful tool in determining a go, not go, a yes, no kind of thing, like tornado warnings are,
Right, and the VROT in general is kind of calibrated based on past tornadoes, so we know, with really, really strong tornadoes like the El Reno tornado, or we'll talk to it in a bit about the Orangeburg tornadoes that we've had over the last few years, you start seeing VROTs, up over 60 and stuff like that. Then you're pretty confident there's a violent tornado strong to violent on the ground. And that's just calibrated against past data. So you can say, okay, we know we had a tornado here with this amount of rotation. Because it is something I don't think a lot of people know, is that our radar can't detect tornadoes themselves because the resolution on it is just not good enough, and tornadoes are very, very small. So we use the kind of general area around where we think a tornado is being produced, and that's what the VROT is. So it's kind of an interpolation down to the surface that comes up with a VROT. So. Okay, so with that little bit of background, we're going to move on to our next weekly segment. Do you want to do a jingle?
The weather event of the week.
Perfect. Okay, so this week we figured we'd start with one that impacted Pierce, and he got to forecast this event, which was last year in April. On April 5th, we had a pretty good tornado outbreak that occurred kind of across our southern area down towards Charleston. It was one of the more intense, severe tornado outbreaks that we've had in the last 20 years. And this was right off the heels of April 2020, where we had another major tornado outbreak that occurred kind of across Orangeburg County and then down towards the coast. So we had tornadoes from central Mississippi all the way to the coastal areas of South Carolina. Multiple EF3s occurred in South Carolina, including EF4 that happened down in Charleston.
Charleston's area in Pembroke, Georgia.
So I was at new hire training. I was 18 months into the Weather Service, but because of all the backlog of things, I was just going to new hire training.
For what it's worth, I took new hire training 24 months after.
There we go.
COVID really put a wrench into that.
Yeah. So Pierce actually got to work this event, and it was one of his first events that he worked as kind of a newly trained forecaster. So let's talk about how that was. Okay, so you come in that day. There's severe weather on the horizon. So what shift were you working, and how did that go?
Well, I was working one of the supplemental shifts that I had been talking about. That was 1 to 9. Okay. I knew that I was likely going to be working radar. I had actually just finished about 3 weeks before that. I had finished the radar application course, which is just the Weather Service's way of training new hires to be on the radar desk. So I knew that I was going to be on the radar desk that day. And, to be honest with you, I was excited to work the radar desk because, as a kid, growing up in high school and college, I dreamed of being a National Weather Service meteorologist and wanting to work the radar desk. So I, honestly, it was, I was nervous, but I was excited. I felt like I was really prepared.
So I will say, for an event like this, where we're potentially expecting a pretty substantial severe weather outbreak, there's going to be multiple people looking at the radar. So it's not just one
it's not just me. We had 2.5 people on the radar desk that day. We had me and Frank. Frank was my backup, and then Tony helped me get started because it was my first event. Tony's one of the lead forecasters here. He was coming off the day shift. He helped me transition to take over as primary radar, and that we may have had 3.5 people on radar that day. I can't remember. I think, we did. We had me working tornado warnings, Chris Landolfi, another general forecaster, working severe thunderstorms, and then I think Frank was the backup radar for the two of us. So we had a big team working the radar desk that day. I was just on the tornado warnings. I took the southern half of the forecast area. And so, this was a well-anticipated event. I think we were in a slight risk from the Storm Prediction Center a few days out, and then by day one we were under an enhanced risk. So we were staffed up really well for this. And then about 24 hours prior to the event, the high-res models started trending towards So we expected this to be a more typical event where we just get a line of thunderstorms to push through and we get some headaches with spin-up tornadoes and stuff. But actually, about 24 hours before this, the high-resolution model started indicating the potential for some isolated thunderstorms ahead of the line in a favorable environment, and that really concerned us for the possibility of strong tornadoes.
Yeah, so usually with isolated events that happen, they're generally more likely to produce tornadoes.
Yeah.
Especially in kind of a favorable wind and temperature dew point environment that was ahead of the main line. Yeah. Usually with like kind of linear thunderstorms, you're less likely to have strong tornadoes that occur from those.
Yes. So that was why we were concerned, and I remember we were briefing our partners on that the day before. And so I was kind of anticipating it being an active afternoon. And so I came in. I got as is my tendency. I did a service analysis, a hand-drawn service analysis.
Old school.
Yes,
Love
old
it.
school.
Yeah.
Did a hand-drawn service analysis to kind of get set up on where everything was. And
the hand analysis can be actually very useful because it forces you to literally draw with your hand and look at everything that's exactly happening, and it can, instead of just looking at a computer generated analysis, doing it by hand can be super helpful.
Yeah, it builds a picture of the atmosphere in your head, and that's really helpful, especially when you are making warning decisions and you don't have a lot of time to just go personally look at stuff. You kind of have a conceptual understanding of what the atmosphere should look like and what it should produce if you're given an isolated thunderstorm in that environment, what you're going to get. So actually the event itself was really kind of interesting the way it unfolded, because we had an area of really heavy rainfall push through about midday. And honestly, it seemed like it was gonna kind of, stabilize us enough to not end up with as widespread as severe thunderstorms as we did. But we had a strong cold front pushing in. It was a strong overall system, so we had to keep our guard up. And by early mid-afternoon time frame, we started to notice a more favorable environment push into our southern counties. Let's go Burke, Barnwell, Bamberg, and Orangeburg counties. Burke, Georgia, and then the other counties are in South Carolina. Those were the real areas we were worried about for isolated strong tornadoes the day before. That environment pushed up following the heavy rainfall. They got a couple breaks in the clouds, which helps to warm the surface up, so you get a little bit of sunshine. And really strong supercells quickly developed in the widespread forcing that was the widespread lift in the atmosphere.
Yeah, so supercells, they're basically just isolated or mostly isolated thunderstorms that are rotating. Yeah. And that's the main distinguishing factor compared to our typical July thunderstorms we have around here. Yep. Those can get really tall and be really strong, but they're not rotating. And when a thunderstorm rotates, it increases the strength it has. It increases the potential to produce hail and to produce tornadoes. So
actually it was really pretty crazy because it felt like the sole source region of all of this was Allendale County, South Carolina. There were 3. We don't get supercells around here very often. It's not a common thunderstorm type. But that day, Allendale County was just chugging them out. I mean, had the initial supercell that developed, I believe, produced an EF3 in Allendale County, and that tracked into the far southern portion of our forecast area. But that supercell developed, and then another supercell developed, and so I got a warning out on that. That one was a fairly easy warning decision because there was a radar-confirmed tornado on it, and spotters were seeing a very wide and strong tornado. And so that was a pretty easy warning decision for me, to be one of my first tornado warnings. And then there was another supercell that formed right behind that tracked. This was a real challenge. It tracked right along the border of our counties and Charleston's warning forecast area. So we had to really do a lot of collaboration with Charleston to make sure that we were, aligning our warnings so that we were warning the people. And that was a great opportunity of collaboration between offices. And I think we did a good job with that.
Yeah, that's sort of just in the inherent nature of when we issue like these polygon-based warnings that you see for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. When you have to draw a line that we don't issue warnings for this county, but we do for this, you're just going to have weird things that happen. And it makes it really tricky when you're, you need 60 seconds to issue a warning.
Yep.
And you're trying to line this up with another office.
Yes.
It can be very tricky.
And so we did a great job collaborating with Charleston. Shout out to our neighbors down there. So those were the first two initial supercells. And, honestly, we weren't, before the Allendale tornado, we were all kind of we were a little bit optimistic that that nothing was gonna happen. It took a long time for that storm in Allendale County to produce a tornado. It was in a favorable environment. It looked like it was gonna produce a tornado, but we just weren't getting reports. And then all of a sudden, everything just went crazy. The line of thunderstorms moving out of Georgia pushed into the west, started issuing severe thunderstorm warnings on that. And then just ahead of that, east of Allendale County, actually, moving up into Barnwell and Bamberg counties, the strongest storm of the day, at least in our warning area, developed and over the course of 20 or 30 minutes gradually strengthened. And then near Ular, I believe Ular or Ulmer, no, Ulmer, there in southern Barnwell County, it produced a very strong tornado. We were talking about VROT earlier, and this was the reason. It had VROT of 73 knots at its peak. Had a debris signature on radar. Had a debris ball on radar. It was really, it wasn't surprising given the environment, but that
was clear cut.
Yes. It was really pretty scary as the warning operator to know you're issuing a warning on that. You're watching it and you don't really know what's going on underneath that. Not to mention while this is happening, Frank, the backup on our the backup warning operator, is issuing a tornado warning on a QLCS tornado up in Lexington County, South Carolina, that included my my home where me and my wife live. And so I'm trying to issue on this strong tornado. I know it's a strong to possibly even violent tornado ongoing in our southern forecast area, and trying to manage the nerves of another possible tornado moving towards my house. That was a real challenging. Being able to manage that did give me a lot of confidence in myself. It really boosted my, I can do this.
It's really not many other examples of a baptism by fire than that kind of situation.
It was a hard thing to keep my composure because a lot of people I know, not just myself, but a lot of my friends around here were in that tornado warning, and it ended up being a strong EF2 tornado moving into Lexington County. Thankfully, it lifted. But the rest of that event was just me trying to follow that same supercell that produced that tornado into Orangeburg County. And it actually was a tornado that was on the ground for 35 miles. It had peak winds of 160 miles per hour, and the same storm actually merged with the line of thunderstorms, then produced another tornado in Manning, South Carolina, Clarendon County. Yep. So it was a really intense baptism by fire day for me. It was definitely better than having my first event be, a bunch of spin up tornadoes and trying to, nail that down, I guess. But it was a rewarding day because I was, I knew that I was making a difference with the warnings I was issuing, but, it was a challenging day knowing that, something like that happened, something like that tornado happened on my, when, I was issuing warnings and stuff. So, it was, I actually was on the survey team that went down and surveyed that tornado, and it was I hope it's the strongest tornado I ever see because I can't imagine anything really much stronger than that.
The pine stands that tornado went through just decapitated them all 4 feet up for 200 yards.
Snapped them. It was pretty unbelievable. When we got down there, me and our WCM and 2 other forecasters, we were all on the survey. And we were just kind of floored by the amount of damage the tornado had done. In such a quick manner, too. It was pretty much as soon as the tornado developed, it was raking this area of pines. It was probably 500 yards of 80 to 100% snapped pines. 4 or 5 feet up. Pretty
big.
Yeah, this was a pine farm for logging. So these were very healthy pines, and they were just gone. And it was actually really impressive. We could see where the tornado actually tracked through because it was being early spring. There was a field it went through that I think had been logged like a year or two before. And you could see where the grass was on either side, but it was brown underneath the tornado. And we came to kind of figure out that it had done some pretty intense like scouring of the ground, taking out some of that grass. And one of the most impressive things I've ever seen weather-wise. And thankfully this tornado weakened before it moved into more populated areas. It still did some damage down the road, but if it had been this strength its entire time, it would have been not good. One of the most impressive things I've seen weather-wise in my young career is the young pines in that area were stripped of their needles completely and were debarked. It was almost unbelievable to see, truly. It's kind of humbling to be on a storm survey like that. Not only to see that kind of devastation, but then also to see it, actually strike people's homes. It really puts it in perspective for you.
Yeah, thankfully no one was killed that day.
Yes.
Which kind of, it gives meaning to kind of the warnings we issue, and we hope people are taking them seriously, that these events are pretty intense. And it's just a matter of luck, pretty much, if the tornado goes over your house or just goes through a pine stand like that. So.
One of the more rewarding things I think I've ever had happen to me in my life was we were talking to some survivors who had lost their home, and they had said that that one of their friends got to them. They lived in a mobile home and they'd lost their home, and one of their friends had got to them with the warning and said, you need to come to a more sturdy shelter. And they got out of their house about 20 minutes before the tornado struck it. That was really it was humbling for me. But also put it in perspective how important, the job is that we do, and how important it is to stay on top of our training and make sure that we're making the best decisions possible. It was a great learning experience and a humbling experience for me.
All right, so on that serious note, thank you, Pierce, for the information. It's always getting a personal aspect of forecasting weather is not something I think a lot of people see, because it just happens behind the ether.
Yeah.
But let's move on to something a little stupider.
That's a good way of putting it. Okay.
So
we're going to introduce a new segment, famously hot weather takes, with Matt and Pierce,
and other people in the office.
And other people, yes.
We'll bring other people in for this.
Matt.
Yes,
what
Pierce.
is the dumbest cloud?
The dumbest cloud. This is an easy one for me to answer, and that is a stratus cloud.
Why?
Because they're meaningless. They don't usually bring a lot of precip. They're very annoying for airlines and such, and they're just dumb. I do not like them at all. They're hard to forecast. It's like forecasting fog. It's very tricky, and they're just dumb.
Yes, they are really dumb.
What is the dumbest cloud, Pierce?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know what the dumbest cloud is. I think that my least favorite cloud is the lenticular cloud. And you want to know why? Because it just looks like a bunch of plates. It doesn't really look like a cloud. Clouds are beautiful, like cumulus clouds and cirrus clouds and all this stuff. But then you got this weird thing that looks like an alien, and it's just, I don't like it personally. I know that's a hot take. I get it. I get that that's a hot take. But lenticular clouds, I don't ever see them here because
we don't have any mountains.
Exactly. We don't have any mountains. I think it's dumb. If I lived near mountains, maybe I wouldn't think that. But you know what?
It's a ridiculous take.
I don't care.
Ridiculous.
I think it's dumb. You know what? You may have just heard a big loud door open and close, almost like a dungeon. That would be because we brought in another one of our meteorologists here in the office to give her hot take about what the dumbest cloud is. Nicole, you wanna tell us what your dumbest cloud is?
See, I thought that you guys just asked me to come in here because you heard me tiptoeing around back there, wondering what you guys were doing. I love all clouds the same, equally. I love clouds. No, but all of them are awesome.
Here,
I know my favorite.
I'll even open up the field guide.
Oh, we got the book of cloud pictures.
What's your favorite cloud then?
No, that's fair. We could do that too.
See, I'm kind of basic. I like cumulonimbus.
The typical meteorologist.
Yeah, but they're just so beautiful in the summer and so
We do.
big and kind of scary looking.
And we actually have cumulonimbus clouds around here.
Yeah, unlike lenticular clouds.
Yeah.
Which we don't have.
Yeah, those are stupid.
What about mammatus clouds?
I do like mammatus.
Yeah.
I think that they're a little bit overrated.
There we go! Yes! Finally, we got
there's
something.
the hot weather take.
Yes, there we go. Mammatus clouds being overrated. I like that. My favorite cloud, I like mammatus clouds actually a lot. They're really pretty. They're extremely dangerous actually. If your pilot's about to fly through them, please kindly ask them not to. There's a lot of turbulence.
A lot of turbulence.
They should know better.
Yeah, they
I
should.
like what sounds like some sort of crazy Latin, the undulatus asperatus clouds.
It's like a pasta. It's like a pasta
It's a
dish.
pasta. Well, it's kind of like a pasta. The wavy ones, they look like lasagna.
Oh, yeah, okay, like lasagna, yeah.
It also kind of sounds like a magic spell.
It does.
Yeah.
It does sound like a magic spell. But yeah, I don't know. We could literally parade everyone in the office in here and have them give their dumbest cloud, but that would just
turn
be
into chaos.
That would be so chaotic. I'm sticking by my stance of the lenticular cloud being the dumbest
All
cloud.
right, Stratus is the dumbest cloud.
Yep. And then Nicole thinks mammatus is overrated. So
All right.
Well, I'm glad that I could call in to your beautiful radio show podcast thing and share my opinion.
yeah, I like that.
Thank
we like
you.
opinions. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we like opinions. So, okay, well, I guess that concludes this first episode of the NWS Columbia podcast.
If you have any questions or anything, please put comments on YouTube. Keep it professional, please. Thank you.
And tweet us.
tweet us. Or
at NWS Columbia.
Yes, we'll post the link to this on Twitter and Facebook. So if you can get options on there, if you have any questions, just post them to those links.
Yes, please do so. Thank you all. Have a good week.